Okay. So last week we started section 3. So today is the session number 18 of semester 1 on braided fusion category class. Last week we started the section on centralizer. And last time we finished with so we stated this theorem, but we did not prove it completely. So let me briefly recall the statement. So you take a braided fusion category and a fusion subcategory, and you assume it is non-degenerate. Then the natural braided functor from K, the unit tensor K centralizer to C is an equivalence. So here you need K non-degenerate. And then, so K is non-degenerate, but K prime may not be non-degenerate. But in fact, it is non-degenerate if only if the braided fusion category C is non-degenerate itself. Okay. Okay, so the proof we started last time. So by corollary 3.5, the corollary 3.5 precisely said that the fusion subcategory is non-degenerate if and if its intersection with its centralizer is trivial. So that we know. Now you take. So we will want to show one component of the proof will be to show that this is C. But for now, we don't know, so we take it to be some fusion subcategory D. And you make the tensor functor from the Deligne tensor product of K and the centralizer of K to D, like that. And we need to show that this is an equivalence. Okay, so this equivalence is also proved in this paper. So the argument to prove it is an equivalence here is to use the lemma 212. So the lemma 212, as I said last time, so the argument using lemma 212 may not be complete. So there's a piece of exercise to do, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. So if you apply lemma 212, you prove that the functor is fully faithful. So there remain to prove, so we still need to prove that the Frobenius power dimension of D, is the product of these two Frobenius power dimensions. And then you can apply this proposition to get an equivalence. So I leave it as an exercise. Otherwise, you can go to Muger directly to see the details. And here I said that maybe because it is commutative, we know that you have this kind of commutation. So it should be exactly as in the group case. Maybe I recall last time. In the group case, with a subgroup K prime K, then the surround generality by K and K prime is exactly that. Here, because it's the Grothendieck-Wien is commutative, maybe you can use this kind of argument. And of course, yeah, anyway, does not matter. So now we know that there is this is an equivalence. So they remain to show that D is equivalent to C. So now we apply corollary 311. Corollary 311. What was that? So the corollary 311 says that if you have a fusion subcategory D of a braided fusion category C, then the double centralizer of D is D is generated by D and the centralizer of C. So the double centralizer of K prime is generated by K and the centralizer of C. This is exactly this corollary. So by definition of that, this K so the double centralizer of K is the smallest fusion subcategory containing K and the centralizer of C. So here, let's read these identities. Let's first start from here. So we know this equivalence, and we know that D is included in C. So this is okay. Now, what about that? We know that K is included in C, so the centralizer of C is included in the centralizer of K. So you just do that. So that's okay. Now, what about this equivalence? Okay, so this is the smallest subcategory generated by K and C prime in C. But you see here, this contains K and C prime, so it should contain and it generates everything. So this is also the smallest because it contains that, and it generates exactly that. So automatically you have that, which is equivalent to that. And finally, we have this equality here by corollary. So this is okay. Now we deduce so this implies this equality imply the following, and so the intersection of K double prime with K prime is C prime. So here, what do we need to see? So the intersection. So we have K prime here. So we need to intersect the K double centralizer. We need to intersect with the K centralizer. So we know that K centralizer, so C prime is included, the centralizer of C is included in the centralizer of K. So we have that. Okay. So we have that, and then so K de l'intenseur C prime which is K double prime up to isomorphism. We don't care about the isomorphism. Is included in K de l'intenseur K prime. Okay. So when you do the intersection here. So we are interested in intersecting with that. So this is the intersection we are interested in. So if you intersect okay, so you intersect, when you intersect here by k prime, in fact, it only involves k prime. So the intersection of that with k prime is exactly k prime. But this is included in there. So when you intersect here, what you get is just C prime, C the centralizer. So you get it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why there are few people on Tuesday. Because it's on Thursday, because of the weather, I think.
Many people are falling sick.
Ah, yeah?
Some of my friends, they are having fever.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So we have now. Now we apply corollary 3.5. So corollary 3.5 is saying that. Okay, so yeah, the subcategory is non-degenerate if and if its intersection with centralizer is trivial. So by corollary 3.5, K prime is non-degenerate if only if this is trivial. If only if C is non-degenerate. So by corollary 3.5, K prime is non-degenerate if and only if C prime equal vec, which means C non-degenerate. Which establish the claim number 2. Okay, claim number 2 is that the subcategory K centralizer of K is non-degenerate if only if C is non-degenerate. Okay. That's okay. Now we want to show the point number 1, which is now it remains to show that C is isomorphic to D. So to prove first point, so we will apply the theorem 3.10 second point to D. Observe that theorem 3.10 double, so which is if the centralizer of C is included in D, then the double centralizer of D is itself. By definition of D, so the centralizer of C is included in the centralizer of K, so centralizer of C is included in D. So we can apply this theorem, and we know that the double centralizer of D is D. So applied to D, yeah, 2, since C prime is included in K prime is included in D. So we obtain D is equaling D double centralizer, which by definition is that, which is like that. But we know that this is C prime, C centralizer. So we are facing the double centralizer of C, which is C itself, because we take the centralizer on C. So we obtain that D equals C. So, but D is nothing but that, which is isomorphic equivalent to that. And so we get, here it's D equals C. So we got the equivalence. And up to this small exercise, small I expect it's small, it's okay. Now we will state, but prove later, an equality regarding the dimension, the categorical dimension. So we have the equation 34 regarding equality on categorical dimension. In fact, the next theorem will state that this also for the Frobenius bond dimension, even if the category is not pseudo-uniform. So it's otherwise it's obvious. As the proof will be done in section 3.6. So the next theorem present a variant of equation 34 from theorem 310 first point, in which the categorical dimension is replaced by the Frobenius bond dimension. Categorical dimensions are replaced by Frobenius bond dimension. So this is theorem 314. So let's see. Be a braid diffusion category. Let D be a fusion subcategory. Then the Frobenius bond dimension of D times the Frobenius bond dimension of the centralizer of D is equal to the Frobenius bond dimension of C times the Frobenius bond dimension of D intersected with the centralizer of C. B. Braid fusion category. Let D in C be a fusion subcategory. Then 37. Frobenius bond dimension. Frobenius bond dimension of D times the Frobenius bond dimension of D prime centralizer is equal to the Frobenius bond dimension of C times the Frobenius bond dimension of D intersected with the centralizer of C. And again, we can say in particular, if C is non-degenerate, then Frobenius-Perron dimension of D time Frobenius-Perron dimension of D centralizer equal to the Frobenius-Perron dimension of C. So let's call that this way if we will need later. Okay, so that will be proved in section 3.6. Is given in section 3.6. Okay, now yeah, so now the notion of centralizer will be modified or will be extended to the notion of projective centralizer. So the projective version. So centralizer involve a double braiding which is trivial somewhere. But the idea of projective centralizer is that it will not involve a double braiding trivial, but a double braiding trivial up to a multiplicative constant. Projective centralizers. So as before, let's see be a braided fusion category. Be a braided fusion category. 3, 3, 1. The notion of projective centralizer. Projective centralizer. So as I said, it is the same as the centralizer, but up to a multiplicative constant. So, in fact, we start by a lemma. So the notion will be, the definition will be stated later. We will just prove a lemma, which contains the definition, but anyway. So let X in C. So you take an object, you take a scalar, a non-zero scalar, and you define the full subcategory we will define a full subcategory of objects such that the double centralizer is identity up to this constant. That is identity times this constant. So we will say later that the object of this full subcategory Nx projectively centralized. Define the full subcategory D index lambda consisting of object Y such that the double braiding is identity times the constant lambda. Okay, so you have that. Then the result say that if you have if you have an object in some d lambda, another object in some d mu, then the tensor product of y and z is in the full subcategory d lambda mu. Next, second point. If you have y in d mu, then the dual of y is in the mu inverse. Remember that mu is lambda inverse. Remember, lambda is invertible. It's non-zero. And finally, if you make the direct sum of all this full subcategory, in fact, what you get is a fusion subcategory. In fact, we will see that it's also graded by this group of non-zero scalar. So the category D equal direct sum lambda non-zero d lambda. This is equation 38 is a fusion subcategory of C. And you see that we essentially only need to prove this. Because as soon as you have that, we already mentioned that a result in the appendix that if you have a fusion you are in a fusion category and you have something which is stable by tensor product, then it should be a fusion subcategory. And it should contain also the dual. In particular, it contains the dual. And so it should not be, I will make a comment regarding that. But this statement is immediate from the hexagon axiom, as we will see. So the rest should be also, up to a comment I will write later, it should be also direct from that. So the proof should be one line, but there is we will provide a direct proof of that, even if it is not, it may not be required. The direct proof of that will involve an important argument which can be useful. In fact, we will use kind of half dual, because when you have let me write the main tool. What we will use here is that if you have a braiding this way, of course you can make the complete dual like that, but you can also consider only to dualize, only to, for example, to do like that. And in fact, this is saying that this is like that. If you put the good, so the fact to do not put the complete dual, but only half dual, only for one branch, then it's the same thing as to have as a reverse braiding for the appropriate object. So this is the main tool that we use to prove directly this one. So this tool is interesting for itself. So it's good to introduce it in this proof. And then once you have that, then this follow easily. But again, let me see, I will write a comment that maybe, so this follow by hexagon relation directly, and this follow from I, and I suspect that also this follow. So this implies this implies this. So we don't need this tool I mentioned, but this tool, as it is interesting for itself, we'll still prove it here. The proof will be a little bit, but it's not so long, but it's not straightforward. Okay. Okay, so before discussing the proof, let me put a remark. So the statement I, the first statement, implied that the decomposition in the third point is define a braiding, a K star braiding, with K the field, the group of the non-zero element, imply that the decomposition in that define a K star braiding on D. Okay. Okay. So proof of lemma 315. Okay, so as I said, so the statement 1 follow directly from the hexagonal shown. From the hexagon shown of the braiding. The braiding, not the grading. Braiding. Why? So it's straightforward, but let me explain. So you have y and z. So y, z, as written here, y, z. Y tensor z. So we consider the braiding with y tensor z. So, and here you put something else. So you draw like that. So we know by hexagonal show that this is this way. Y, z, maybe, what should I write here? Some x or some x. X. So you first do here and then here. This is the hexagonal show. But by assumption, we know that this is so this involves the, so this is, this part is mu identity of the, wait. No, you need to put the double braiding. Yeah, so in my note I was a little bit too quick. Why it makes no sense? So you need the double braiding. So here you develop again. So you have that, and then you make the double braiding. So what you start with, I guess you have no too much choice but to do that. No. Here you have a choice. So let me have a look. So first Z and X. Okay. Then Y and Z. Okay. So you are here. Now you do this and this first, I guess. So X and Y. Okay. That's simplified. So now you double braiding here. And then like that. Okay. So here, by assumption, this double braiding is lambda identity. So this is equal to, so you got the point. Lambda identity. So lambda times y, z, x. So here you have one thing, and then identity, and then another. So which is lambda mu, like that. Okay. So this is the first point. This follow directly from the hexagon action. Okay. So the first point is immediate. Now we want to prove the second point directly. Even if, as I said, maybe you deduce the third point from the first, and then you deduce the second from the third. But let's prove the second directly using, so by involving this interesting tool of half duality. Now, the name half duality is not a usual name, but it illustrates what it means. So for the second point, you consider object X, Y in the category and the following diagram. So we will have a big diagram, and I will draw the corresponding picture. So this diagram will be the equation 13.9. Okay, so let me draw the diagram before the pause. So this X tensor Y star, tensor Y, X tensor Y tensor Y star, tensor X tensor Y, Y tensor X, tensor Y star, tensor Y, and finally Y tensor X. Here we apply you create, so you create from nothing, so co-evaluation of Y, we create the Y tensor Y star, and the rest is just identity of X tensor Y. here. Here is identity of X, and then you put a co-evaluation in the middle, creating Y tensor Y star, and then identity of Y. Here, identity of X tensor Y, tensor evaluation of Y. Here, the reverse breeding. Here, identity of Y, tensor braiding of Y star with X, tensor identity of Y. So here it's a Y, not really readable. Here, identity of Y tensor X times evaluation of Y. Here, so braiding YX times identity of Y star tensor Y. And we also need something in diagonal, which is, so you braiding Y tensor Y star with X tensor identity of Y. Okay. So we will illustrate by picture every component of this big diagram, and that will serve as proof. So we will prove every intermediate, every component commuting diagram. So the goal is to prove that this big thing is commuting. Okay, so we will see that after the pause. No, not this one. Pause. Oh. Okay. So let's come back to the proof of lemma 315. Okay, so let's recall, as usual, evaluation map of Y, Fy and co-Fy denote the evaluation and co-evaluation morphism for Y, as usual. Denote the evaluation and co-evaluation morphism for Y. And the C denotes the braiding. Okay. As you can expect, that's okay. The braiding in C. So the author of the paper noted here that they omitted to write the associativity and unique constraint. So we did not talk about that in this class. But if you want to be very correct, a monoidal category is defined with pentagon axiom and unit axiom involving associativity constraint and unique constraint. But by MacLane theorem, in fact, you can omit. So constraints are omitted. For readability. So this is something you have to be careful. It's a little bit confusing. So you have MacLane theorem saying that some sense you can omit the associativity constraint when you are doing some proof. So because we have this theorem, why? What is the point? What is the need to recall this? it's a little bit, as to say, without loss of generality, we can omit. There is also MacLane strictness theorem. So I don't know if here they are saying that we can assume that the category is strict. So you have two theorems. You have MacLane strictness theorem and MacLane coherence theorem. So this sentence can apply to both theorem of MacLane. Anyway, it's a trap in monomial category theory. So because you say you can always omit that, you can omit the associativity constraint unless you cannot, in fact. In some very specific case, you cannot omit the associativity constraint. In particular, when we, for example, in some other paper, some other class 1 year ago, we involve the triangular prism equation. In fact, this number is exactly these numbers exactly encode the associativity constraint. So if you omit, in fact, we did that in some previous class, but the associativity constraints naturally appear when you consider this kind of diagram. And so you have to be very careful with this kind of sentence. Anyway, you have to identify the case where it can be omitted and the case it cannot. Okay, so now we will prove that every component of the diagram commute pictorial. First, we will consider the left triangle. And we will see that will involve the naturality, an argument we already saw before. So the left triangle in diagram 39 commute by the naturality of the braiding. By the naturality of the braiding. We all naturality. We already mentioned that before, but let me recall the picture. So you have the diagram, the picture corresponding to the left triangle is as follows. We have X, and here some co-evaluation Y star, and some braiding. So this is exactly, I guess, you have this braiding here. So you do that, which is equal to that. This is equal to this X, Y. And this is naturality. We already mentioned that. By naturality, you can move this below. Wait. I forgot something. Why? So you can move this below. This is not hexagon action. This is just naturality of the braiding. So if you forgot, I explain in more details the naturality of the braiding. So you should see the details regarding naturality we provided in the proof of proposition 232. Okay, so this is the left triangle is commutative diagram. Okay, now the right square. So this right square. And in fact, we will see that this right square is trivially this right square trivially commute. Once we will have draw the picture, it will be immediate. So the right square trivially commute. Why? So this should be in blue. So the right square trivially commute, and it is not about naturality. This is in the paper that they say the left triangle and the right square commute by naturality. It's not correct. Only the left triangle commute by naturality and the right square trivially commute. So why? So the equality for the right square is the following. So you have so the right square, it's a little bit complicated. So let's start from here. You do that or that. You start from here. You have, wait. Yeah, here. Y, X, Y star, X star. You apply a braiding identity, and then identity evaluation, and then reverse braiding. So what do you see? You see you have the braiding and the reverse braiding, and the inverse braiding, sorry. So this and that will be the identity. So what you get, you see that this will compose with that directly. So it will give the identity. So there remain only some identity and some evaluation. So this is exactly that. So this is, in fact, this is trivial. There is nothing to say, but if you draw, it's even easier to see why it is trivial. So Y, X, Y star, Y. So you have a first braiding this way, and here an evaluation. So if you want to record your identity, and then an evaluation, and then somewhere. So you have to be careful. Yeah, this way. So this is CYX, and this is CYX inverse. So the composition of the two is trivially the identity. There is nothing to prove. So CYX inverse composed with CYX equal identity of YX trivially. So you have that, which is exactly the picture for the other component of the square. So, okay. Next, we are interested in the middle triangle. And this will be exactly the hexagon action, while the middle triangle commute by the hexagon action. Why? In fact, the middle triangle is exactly the hexagon axiom. So the middle triangle, so y star, x, y. So it's just saying that you have identity, braiding, and then identity, braiding is equal to y star x, y. Identity here. You have braiding. So, okay. Hexagon axiom. Recall that the hexagon axiom is just saying that you can move this string here, this one here, and put the thing, you can exactly do that. So this is by definition of braiding, so it's okay. So we prove that every component of the diagram commute, so the entire diagram commute. Hence, the entire diagram commute. And so we can draw the picture for this equal this. In particular, the big square, the big rectangle, the big rectangle commute, which is the following picture. For the big rectangle. So you have x, y, and y star. Here you have grading this way. And here you have an evaluation map, which is equal to x, y, identity, co-evaluation, y star, grading here, identity, and evaluation. So this is exactly the picture for this equal this. Okay. You can write it explicitly algebraically. Algebraically. But I don't like to say algebraically. It's not, we are in category theory. How to say, so in other words, maybe in other words. In other words is not good also, but, which is, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so here you have to, no, you don't need to say that because we need to make a modification. So this is equal to, so here you have a zigzag relation. So this is equal to just that. So you just have a braiding. So this is equal to C inverse yx directly by zigzag. 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 Okay, and now if you reformulate this equal this, you can reformulate this equal this as follows. So, and this will be equation 40. Yx inverse equal, and you write the right-hand side. So identity y tensor x tensor evaluation of y composed with identity of y tensor braiding y star x tensor identity of y composed with co-evaluation of y tensor identity of x tensor y. Now, remember that this inverse braiding is the definition is used for the reverse category. And so if you apply the same argument to the reverse category, you get the identity without inverse. So without the reverse braiding. So just for the braiding. Similarly, we have from the reverse braiding. So I forgot if they call. I forgot if they wrote it this way or this way, but anyway, the reverse braiding. You get directly, similarly, Cxy equal and you have just to be careful. So it is the same, except when a braiding is involved. Version of y, tensor identity of y, and here it should be this way, and the rest is the same. It will be equation 41. And so the only difference is here, and this we will focus on that soon. Okay, so let me write also the ID. So the ID of so pictorial ID. So let me see. So this pictorially, it say how to deal with half dual in the following sense. So you have x and y. And then you just take the dual, but only for y. This is equal to this. and this way. So for the other braiding, the reverse braiding is equal to so that's the big interest tool in this proof. In fact, so you have a braiding and you only dualize only on the y component. And you say, okay, it is equal to what? In fact, it is equal to what you can expect, the braiding, but here you have to, you see, here y is below, here y star is below, and x is above. Same, x is above, x is above here. So that is very interesting for itself. So this is a fundamental tool, a fundamental result. When you okay. And if for fun, you can also again do that, which corresponds to what? That. And that will prove that so for example, C of x, y double star is equal to C x double star, y double star. Anyway. Okay. So that's useful. Now, for itself. Now we will use that to prove this point number 2. Now, suppose y star is in the full subcategory d lambda. So remember, because it's a long d lambda is defined this way. So you have this lambda here. So x is fixed from the beginning, and y is in d lambda, so you have this constant. Okay. So it means, so the double braiding, so you can do that with a double braiding, or which is equivalent to say, if you put this the other side and you put an inverse, so this is equal to lambda times the inverse of that. Obviously. So this is equal to lambda inverse of x y star. So you have this identity, but look, this is exactly these two components of this. So we know that this is equal to lambda this. So we know that this is equal to lambda this. And I realized that I made a mistake, maybe. Wait, let me see later. So up to now, it's okay. So you see, this corresponds to this part. As we go before. So you obtain so then, so let me just write it. I forgot to put something here. Then using equation 40 and 41. Hey, Bob. We conclude that Cyx inverse equal lambda Cyx. So let me recall again. You have Cyx. So this equal lambda this, and the rest is the same. So this equal lambda this. Okay. So this meaning that y is in here. Y. Okay. So let me write more details. So then you have Cyx composed with C. Wait. Yeah, here I made a mistake. Cxy. It's really Cxy. Okay. So what I wanted to write is Cxy composed with Cyx is equal to lambda inverse identity of x tensor y. Meaning that, according to what is written here, that y star is in D lambda. Y star. Y, not y star. Y is in D lambda inverse. So we took y star here, and we obtain. So maybe it may be more nicer to just to choose the one here, and then we obtain this way, which means that. So it is the modification I did is complete. It is similar. It just to get something cleaner, which means that y is in D lambda. So you started. So everything is an equivalence. So y star is in D lambda inverse if and if y is in D lambda. So this proves double point, the second point. And finally, the statement 3 follow from 1 and 2 combined. But as I said, and as it will be commented and remarked, you can deduce 3 from 1 directly. Okay. So let me write this remark. There is a first remark about that coming from the paper, but there is a comment by myself where I say maybe a little bit more, unless I am mistaken. So the first remark is about the half dual, as I mentioned before, the idea of half dual. So identities 40 and 41 are standard and can be found for example, in the book of Christian Cassel. Can be found, for example, in the book of Christian Cassel. So Christian Cassel is the French 1995 book on quantum group of algebra. I forget quantum group, I guess is the name. Proposition 13 written in, so it's a strange notation. I don't know if you know that. So this is 13 in Romanian notation and 3.1 in Indian notation, I guess. This is Romanian notation for number. This is Indian notation for number. Anyway. And the second point is about the fact that you can skip the point 2 if you are just interested in the point 3. So statement 3 of the previous lemma also follow directly from 1 since any fusion subcategory in the sense defined before. Any fusion subcategory of fusion category is rigid. So this notation is a little bit confusing because, of course, if you define a notion of fusion subcategory as it should be, then it should be a fusion category by definition. But in this paper, the notion of fusion subcategory is not defined as a fusion category, but it turns out to be a fusion category by what is proved in the appendix. Fusion subcategory is defined just as something which is stable by tensor. But because fusion means finite, it's like for a finite group, as I already explained several times. A finite monoid, submonoid of a group is a subgroup. Same idea. So, statement since any fusion subcategory of a fusion category is rigid. So, fusion subcategory as defined before, which is not a fusion category by definition, but by result. So see the corollary F.7 in appendix F. Okay. Now, my personal comment is the following. So, why not deducing the point 2 directly from 1 and 3? Let me write this as an exercise, maybe. As an exercise with a question mark. I have a doubt. because they did not mention that in their paper. So d lambda is a semi-simple abelian subcategory. So the dual of y is in D by the point 3 because it's a fusion subcategory. So there exists a lambda prime such that y star is in, because y is if you take y to be simple, so y is assumed to be simple. So maybe there is an issue regarding simple thing. So let let y in the simple. So because it's abelian, a simple object. Wait. Should be in one component. So it's maybe they are missing some details. So you have one is a component of y tensor y star, but this is in D1. This is in D lambda lambda prime. So lambda lambda prime equal 1. So lambda prime equal lambda inverse. Which is exactly the point 2. So the exercise is to check whether everything is correct here or if they are missing. So exercise. Check this. So is there a gap? There should be a gap, otherwise this long proof is useless. But it's useless except if you are interested in this intermediate tool, as I said. Is it correct? Let me see. Is it correct? So I want to say, so maybe another column. It's almost time. Maybe yes, but the equation 40 and 41 are interesting for themselves. Interesting for themselves. So even if I am right, this equation. So this thing is very important. So it's good to mention that here, even if it is not, it will not be strictly required. Okay. So now we can state the first definition for projective, because up to now we did not write projectively centralizer. Definition 389, and that will be enough for today. Let x, y be simple object. we say that X and Y projectively centralize each other. Projectively centralize each other if, as you can expect, projectively centralize each other if there exists lambda non-zero such that Cxy composed with Cyx composed with Cxy equal lambda identity of extensor Y. In other words, Xy lambda like that, with lambda non-zero. Okay, and then, so I will stop here. Then we will say here this definition is for simple object. But if you take two objects not necessarily simple, they centralize each other if their simple components centralize each other. And then you can also talk about the two subcategories to centralize each other if their objects centralize each other. And again, you can talk about the projective centralizer of an object and then the projective centralizer of a subcategory. Yeah. And the next subsection will be relation between centralizer and projective centralizer. Okay.